In the past, November has traditionally been either the first or second busiest month of the year in terms of game release, and I would say with this year, you can make an argument that November is even better than October. I know it doesn't have that Red Dead Redemption 2 level of hype game that October has. There is one game that a lot of gamers are hyped for, some are not hyped for, and we'll start with that right away. But of course, in this video, we've got 12 new PlayStation 4 games coming in November to go over, so let's get right into it. And as I mentioned in the beginning, Fallout 76 is a game that has some people really excited and then other people are very skeptical. Where do I lie on this fence? Well, I'm gonna check out the game. I've always been a fan of the Bethesda open world game, and Fallout 76 with this new element of online, I definitely understand why there are skeptics. We don't know how Bethesda is gonna deliver on this front. Microtransactions being included to the game, and it seems like the biggest complaint you guys have about Fallout 76 is the visuals. Doesn't look that much different than Fallout 4. I wasn't really expecting anything much different considering this is just releasing 3 years after Fallout 4. But I'm quite surprised about how much has been made about the visuals of this game. Now, going into the release of Fallout 76, you have to understand that this is going to be a game that's a work in progress. The game that is released on the release day is not going to be the same game a year from now, so even if the game isn't great from the get-go, it's a game that I imagine Bethesda will stay very committed to, and they're going to continue to update, add more content. So there's going to be a lot of longevity attached to Fallout 76 when it drops on November 14th, but of course the Break It In early test application does kick off on October 30th. Next up, we have a PlayStation 4 exclusive that I am very excited for, and that is Tetris Effect. A lot of you guys still might not be sold on Tetris Effect. You might just see it as a Tetris game, but hey, I ask you this, what is wrong with Tetris? Tetris is one of the most iconic gaming experiences ever, and there's definitely nothing wrong with it. However, Tetris Effect is more than just your standard Tetris. What this game has really going on for it is its presentation, its stylization. The particle effects, the music with Tetsuya Mizuguchi's work in the game, I'm expecting something brilliant, and even better if you have PlayStation VR, because while Tetris Effect isn't going to be a PSVR exclusive title, it is going to be a game fully playable in VR, and everything we've heard has been super positive about it. Tetris Effect hits PlayStation 4 on November 9th. Next up, we have a game that has really gone under the radar, and it's surprising because it's a part of a very storied franchise, and that is Hitman 2. Hitman 2 is the follow-up to the Hitman game that was released back in 2016. Remember that game was released episodically, and that turned a lot of gamers off. However, with Hitman 2, it will be released as one standalone product. We have heard that there will be a couple of single-player expansions released for the game sometime down the line. However, you're getting an entire experience right from the get-go. If you are a fan of the first Hitman title, this is going to be a lot more of the same in terms of gameplay, but do expect it to be fleshed out a little bit more as Hitman 2 drops on November 13th. Next up is a game that was by many one of the most anticipated games of the year, and then it got hit with a delay, and that is Spyro Reignited Trilogy. I feel like after the delay, this game lost a little bit of anticipation, but as we're inching closer and closer to the release, hopefully that picks up a little bit. The Spyro Reignited Trilogy is much like the Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy. We're getting the first 3 Spyro games, Spyro the Dragon, Spyro Ripto's Rage, as well as Spyro Year of the Dragon. They're all remade from the ground up. The visuals look even better than what we got in Insane Trilogy. I'm talking about the leap from the original games to these new games. These are legitimately looking like PlayStation 4 games, and you really can tell that they originated as PS1 titles. Obviously not to the level of some of the more technically impressive PlayStation 4 titles, but they look very good. And Spyro Reignited Trilogy is going to be a game that thrives off a lot of nostalgia, but if you've never played Spyro either, I would definitely give the Reignited Trilogy a look. It drops November 13th. Next up, we have one of the more controversial game releases of the year, and that is Battlefield 5, another game that was hit with a delay recently. This one was supposed to release this month, but they decided to push it back to November, and I think that was a great idea. Battlefield 5 was originally scheduled to be released right in between Call of Duty Black Ops 4 and Red Dead Redemption 2, and I thought that was just a recipe for disaster, especially when you go through the PR troubles of this game. It was not going to do very well if that original release date had stuck. Now that it's being released in November, I don't know if that's enough with all of the mishandling of this game. With Battlefield 5, I don't think it's going to be an issue of the game being bad. I think this is another issue with EA PR just not being there, how they've handled the promotion of this game, and I'm not just talking about the box art or anything like that, or some of the trailers they've released. I'm talking about some sizable issues, like going back to E3, where they hardly showed off the game at all. They released a trailer for the single-player campaign, and we saw no multiplayer gameplay. That was your chance to sell gamers on Battlefield 5, and they really fumbled it there. And then you had EA saying if you don't like aspects of the game, don't buy it. That's just disrespectful to everyone that's been supporting Battlefield for years on end. I'm sure Battlefield 5 will be a good game, and honestly, I've just done more complaining about it than actually selling you guys on the game. It's gonna be Battlefield. It's gonna be a quality multiplayer first-person shooter. With this one, I'm just very interested to follow it from a commercial standpoint. I'm interested in how this game is gonna resonate with gamers because I don't expect it to sell as well as Battlefield 1. And really, to me, it's a question of how far of a drop-off it's gonna be. We'll find out as Battlefield 5 is dropping on November 20th. Next up, we have Darksiders 3. Yes, THQ Nordic is finally bringing back Darksiders with a brand new game in Darksiders 3. Now, I have to say, Darksiders 3 was a game when I initially saw gameplay of it, it looked very rough around the edges. This was a game that I was not sold on at all, and I was very worried about the game. However, seemingly it has pulled a Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice. If you guys don't know about that game's initial gameplay looked very sloppy as well, and then it turned out to be absolutely excellent. Darksiders 3, with the recent footage that's been released, this game is shaping up very, very nicely. This is the Darksiders I knew and loved. The gameplay looks great. Visually, it looks excellent as well. Darksiders making a comeback was a little bit of a surprise to me because Darksiders 1 and 2, yes, they were good games, but it seemed like they didn't completely resonate with all gamers, especially Darksiders 2. So it'll be interesting to see if Darksiders 3 can captivate gamers from a commercial standpoint. It is being released towards the end of the month on November 27th. Next up, we have a PlayStation 4 console exclusive in The Quiet Man. The Quiet Man is a new IP coming from Square Enix and is touting to deliver an immersive story-driven cinematic experience, seamlessly blending high production live action, realistic CG, and pulse-pounding action gameplay. Now, The Quiet Man is a budget title. It'll be released at $14.99, and Square Enix has even said that this is a game that can be completed in one sitting, so don't expect a content-packed experience. However, do expect something that is rather unique for what it's trying to accomplish. The Quiet Man hits PlayStation 4 on November 1st. Next up, we have a brand new racing game in Grip Combat Racing. Grip is touted as a high-octane, hardcore combat racer packing ferocious speed and armed to the teeth with heavy weapons. It'll allow you to scale walls, ceilings, and anything else you can get your tires onto as you master tantalizing tracks, tricks, and perform mind-blowing stunts to race your way across the cosmos. Customize your vehicle, utilize devastating weapons, and exploit a destructible environment to ensure not only victory, but the complete annihilation of your opponents. Grip drops on the PlayStation 4 on November 6th. Next up, we have one of the best received survival games finally coming to PlayStation 4 in The Forest. Survival games have kind of peaked at this point, but we still see a couple of them trickle onto the PlayStation 4, and while I wouldn't recommend a ton of them, The Forest is one that I would. In The Forest, you'll have to find food and water, and as night approaches, build a fire and shelter to keep yourself warm. Tranquil at first, but you soon find there is something sinister lurking in the trees. Presentation is great, and the solo play is great as well. The Forest hits the PlayStation 4 on November 6th. Next up, a new fantasy fighting game in Omen of Sorrow. Omen of Sorrow features the monsters of classic horror and gives them a new twist. It features rich mythology and allows you to discover its fast-paced combat in classic 2D style as you fight for your life against werewolves, vampires, and other creatures of lore. There's not a ton of characters in Omen of Sorrow, but what it touts is individuality with each of the characters, so they play very, very differently from one another. The visual style is great, and if you're into fighting games, this is one to keep an eye on. Omen of Sorrow hits the PlayStation 4 on November 6th. Next up, we have a game coming from the guys over at From Software, but it's completely different to what they've worked on in the past, and it is Deracine. It's a PlayStation VR exclusive. This is a brand new story adventure created by the guys that made Dark Souls and Bloodborne in From Software, and it's available exclusively on PSVR, so yes, it's a VR experience. And as a spirit summoned by a young girl in a secluded boarding school, the player must prove its existence and build a unique bond with the students through clever interaction. There's mystery in the story that'll unfold, and the spirit must use its ability to manipulate the forces of life and time to change the fate of the pupils. Deracine drops exclusively to PlayStation VR on November 6th. And lastly, we have World of Final Fantasy Maxima. World of Final Fantasy Maxima is seen as an expanded version of World of Final Fantasy. It's been powered up and reborn as World of Final Fantasy Maxima. New characters from the Final Fantasy lore, there are new monsters, and it's touting even more fun and excitement to the original experience. It features an avatar change system where you can play as the champions themselves, and you'll fight your way through exhilarating battles as legendary Final Fantasy heroes. World of Final Fantasy Maxima hits the PlayStation 4 on November 6th. So that concludes 12 upcoming PlayStation 4 games of November 2018. What do you think? Which games of November are you picking up? There are a ton of games to check out, but if I had to make my personal input, Tetris Effect is a game that all of you guys should have your eyes on. Spyro Reignited Trilogy is going to be fantastic. No, Fallout 76 has a little bit of skepticism attached to it, but I still think Bethesda's going to deliver with that. Darksiders 3 also has a ton of potential, but I definitely want to hear from you guys. What do you think, and which games are you planning to check out in November? Sound off with all of your thoughts in the comments section down below. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.